Here we go. So, welcome to another awesome episode of My Morning Coffee, where the conversation is always hot, bold, and full of flavor. Today, we have an awesome guest that we are happy to bring to you, Redondo Beach Police Department Chief Keith Kauffman. He's like our little local celebrity. Everybody seems to love him. So, I'm glad that he's able to show up for us and have this conversation that many people have been looking forward to. Our community has a lot of questions. They want, some updates and really just want to hear from him. And we also today will have Lieutenant Gia Neil
Bill
Sneed.
Sneed.
I'm gonna need you to get rid of that other name and just go by Jeffrey's last name. I think he deserves it at this point. I digress.
Well,
Anyways,
you're right, he does. But as far as everyone's concerned in my professional life, I'm known as Lieutenant Neil. So I'm keeping that in for another year and a half, and then when I retire, I'm losing it.
I'm so excited for you.
It's out of here.
So excited for you. So we'll get into some general policing questions, and we'll have some updates from Keith about what's going on in Redondo, and we have some questions. But let's go ahead and get started as we always do and talk about what's in our cup this morning, what's going on with you, and any updates that you might want to share real quick. Sarita?
I have my cup, but there's nothing except for water I just spilled on myself. But I'll put some water in it. My allergies are kicking my butt right now, so these Santa Ana's got me all sniffly and swollen. But so there's nothing in my cup, but I'm gonna put something in it. And how am I doing? My heart has been heavy, obviously. And it's been a lot of, at least for me professionally, holding space for, in particularly Black people, Black professionals that have been struggling in their professions and being with showing up for other people while not feeling as though they've been supported. So I've done quite a few workshops and have more than a few conversations with clients in that regard. So my heart is heavy. I had a moment where I was trying to enjoy my Thai food and my Filipino food, and I just bursted into tears. I couldn't hold it. So recognizing that I needed to do a little bit of self-care as well during this time. So that's how I'm doing. But
So the
overall,
therapist needs therapy sometimes.
all the
Yes.
time.
Okay.
Dr. Rowe, I'll see you on Wednesday at
Good
3
to
o'clock.
know. Good to know. What's up with you, Gia? What's in your cup?
I have my favorite coffee in my cup.
What is that, whiskey?
No, actually, it's all coffee because I went out this weekend. I socialized a little bit. I went to a birthday party, a 50th birthday party, and I drank a whole bottle of Bellini all by myself. So
Oh, you?
Oh, you thought you
yeah.
were grown. You coming out of quarantine swinging.
Yeah, no, it was. I guess it was needed. So so now this morning I'm having straight just coffee. So yeah, but I haven't been up to too much anything either. I'm with Sarita. Um my heart is heavy. My brain is tired. My mind is tired. I'm exhausted mentally. I've been having a lot of more conversations with my husband about a lot of things that have been going on since all this unrest and different things. And I've been finding myself talking more about my job with him. And that's something that I never really did. And I don't do that with a lot of, even with my friends and family. I've always not really spoke about my job and what I do for years. And it's really recently, a lot of people are just now finding out what I do. And it wasn't that I was ashamed of what I do, because I love I love my job. It's been good to me, and I feel as though I've been good to the profession. It's just, I know in my community and the police is not always looked upon as nice. So I just chose not to really talk about it. And then I've chosen not to really get into a bunch of conversations right now, because it's kind of hard for me being a Black woman in law enforcement and, dealing with what's going on in my own community. So, I struggle. And then the social media and the news, with all what I see, I've seen so much negativity. It's affected me, and I know it is in more ways than one. So I'm just trying to stay sane through all this and continue to be me and do the job that I do. And when I can have a conversation with level-headed people, and when people are not so angry, I do engage in conversations. And I look at Jada. She wants to be on. She knew the chief was coming on, so she look at her. She told it for you, chief. Look at her. She's oh my God, Jada, stop it. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. As far as what I've been up to, nothing.
Trying to get through.
Trying to get through, because there's a lot of things I've seen and heard, that have been hurtful. And I'm sure we'll talk about that kind of stuff as, the show goes on with our profession.
Chief, what's in your cup this morning?
I have basic station Folgers terrible coffee in my Long Beach Neptunes cup. Shout out to all my Neptune buddies. It's my dive club. It's where I should be. It's white sea bass season. And for those of you that don't know, right off the coast of PV right here, we have premier world-class white sea bass. Haven't had much time to do that though. So I'm looking forward to getting back in the water.
I bet you are. My cousin Neil, who was on the show before, remember you guys, he spent the whole weekend on the boat and just fishing. And then he likes putting pictures out there saying, "Hey Tonya, you hungry?" Things like that. Just a jerk. Just a jerk.
Okay.
So yeah, well, for me, I attended the Redondo Beach protest this weekend. It was nice. It was very community based. It felt good to know that the people around you support the cause. I was able to take Talia because my boys are lazy and just would not get up, and she likes hanging out with me. But it was just interesting after the march, the conversations that were had, right? So I have a neighbor across the street I've never spoken to. We've never talked before, and she came up and she decided to just let me know, I found out I suffer from white privilege. And I was like, oh, this is great. But that's how it started. But the way it ended was I have to start educating myself on different things that I didn't know about. Like, I've been walking through this world super oblivious to so many things. So it's been a pretty enlightening last couple of weeks for me. And with that, it's been heavy, and in my cup, I just have some regular old coffee because I have a long day. That's about it. But I wanted to go ahead and ask Chief if he wants to go ahead and get started for us. And is there any updates for Redondo Beach in regards to, policing and patrolling and any rioting and any looting? They've been asking, and, it would be great if you can go ahead and just let them know what they should be looking out for, if there's anything new going on.
Sure. Yeah. So when everything broke, we went into an emergency staffing schedule, much like most departments across LA County did, where essentially everybody works every day. So you work 12 hours and then you're off 12 hours and you work 12 hours again. And so basically in Redondo, what people saw was where we would normally have 5 or 6 patrol cars on the street, 5 or 6 officers and a sergeant and a lieutenant. We went to 52 officers at times. So a huge increase in police presence. And, my philosophy has always been every chance I get is trying to do things proactively. And I'm sure we'll get into community engagement and transparency. And that's probably one of the things that weighs heavy on my mind right now is that we're an open book. We allow for engagement. And the best time to do that is when there's not a problem.
Exactly.
It's a big old problem right now. And so I'm getting, beat up on phone and email and my officers and I'm saying, hold on a minute. We're tired. We're busy. We are open to do this. I'm open to do this show, but we have a platform where this openness is all the time. And that's probably where some police agencies need to be. But I digress. Back to what's going on in the city. So, you know, people are scared. And I personally walk the business districts myself. And you know, Tonya, a lot of our businesses are on Artesia, and then a lot of them are in South Redondo and the Hollywood Riviera. And I just walked around and talked to people, and they're nervous. They're asking me about boarding up, and you know, I can't tell someone to do it or not to do it, but what I can tell them is I don't have any specific intelligence or reason to believe that your shop is threatened. So if I did, I would come and tell you. So we in Redondo, what a lot of people don't understand is we're part of mutual aid agreements across the county, and for us it's called Area G. Our group of cities is in Area G. So we deployed in the South Bay platoon, and we were in LA on Saturday night. We were in Santa Monica. We were in Long Beach. We've been all over the place, and then of course we're here. So policing is a team sport. And when stuff happens, we all try to help each other to the best of our ability. So that's what was happening in the beginning. And then that sort of shifted to protecting the city, especially at nighttime. We had very good intelligence about people that wanted to come here to do harm. And it's unfortunate, but we were ready for them. And we arrested quite a few people that came to Redondo Beach over a 4-day span, with cars full of loot from other areas, bolt cutters, hammers, and the like, cuts on their hands. It's just, you know, I don't know, maybe we stopped a crime. I think we did, but it was happening. And that has since subsided. So, but we're still out there patrolling diligently. And, you know, I think now, that's the easy part of policing, the actuals, the being out there. That's the easy part. The hard part is the all the other stuff. I worry about my officers and their families right now, because they are getting trashed by friends, by family members, and it's starting to weigh on them a bit. So now I'm in a leadership mode. Hey, you got to hold your head up. Okay, I get it. We're getting painted with a broad brush, but this is not us. And we, you know, I've been sticking up for the profession, and we need to do that a little bit. We need to be open. We need to have those conversations. But you know what? If we've been doing it, we've been having those conversations, and we've been making those change, be careful, because I'm going to fight back. There's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work, and they need to be recognized for it.
One of the things, real quick, one of the things that I do want to commend you on, because when we had our first conversation, back when I was doing that interview for League of Women Voters, it struck me how much solidarity you have with the profession, how much you have their back. You have the back of your fellow officers. But you wrote this letter that you released last week, 2 weeks ago, and that was jaw-dropping for me. It was jaw-dropping for many people. So can you explain what went into your decision? As much as you hold tight to your profession and having everyone's back, you decided to step out and write this letter that is pretty unprecedented.
You know what? Maybe it's unprecedented that I wrote it, but it's not unprecedented that good cops can't stand bad cops. And there's nobody that gets more upset over seeing something like that on video than a good cop, because we know what's about to happen. When I saw that video, I was like, oh, no, 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 no. Because I know what's coming. I'm in my, I don't even know now, 27th year, I think. And every time something like this happens, we get set back. And so it's so upsetting to see it happen halfway across the US. And I know for sure I'm going to get beat up. and I know my people are going to get beat up, and I know the good cops are going to get beat up over this. And it's really hard to say, yeah, but we don't do that. It's really hard. But someone's got to stick up for the good cops in this world, because communities, especially communities that are suffering, need us the most. And we need to be there. And so now what I'm seeing is what I feel is an overreaction, knee-jerk reactions to a lot of things. And I just don't want communities damaged more. I don't want the profession damaged more. But yeah, I mean, I saw that video and I was upset about it. That's not us. And when I say us, I don't mean Redondo Beach PD. That's not good policing. I learned a lot about policing working in Hawthorne. That's where I spent 22 years of my career. A lot of people don't know that. They think I worked here in the beach community my whole life, but I didn't. I worked in a tough area, and I worked in an us versus them mentality. When I started, that's what it was. It was us against them, and it was reactive, and it was zero tolerance, and it was tough. And guess what? It doesn't work. It's a Band-Aid. And so I learned that the solution was this community engagement. You know, if you don't have your community behind you, forget it. I mean, you've got, what do we have? 95 cops and 67,000 residents. They better want to be policed. Otherwise, we're going to have a big problem. So my whole life, I've dedicated everything to community-oriented policing and engagement. And you know what? I've been mostly laughed at about it for almost my entire career. And I laugh back because I know it's a solution. You know, Tonya, the time to talk is when we bolted the MLK bench to the front of the station. That's the time to talk. We don't have a problem. Let's sit down. Let's dig deeper. Let's let you into our department. Let's be transparent. That's when we do it. Now everything hit the fan and everybody wants to talk, and that's great. I love it. But let's talk and let's be reasonable. Let's have a great conversation here. Let's not have a yelling match or a knee-jerk reaction, or don't paint all my officers and their families with a broad brush. It's not right.
Chief, you touched on, you said a lot in what you said, and there's a lot, we can have a conversation about a lot of things that you said, in which we should. And you're right, you touched on, I can't remember, I should have wrote some things down. I'm hoping Tonya got them down. But you said something about you've always had an open door policy, or open for your community to come in and talk with your officers. A lot of police departments have that avenue, but I don't think the citizens know that those things exist. Okay, and yeah, we can always talk when nothing's going wrong. Everybody's okay, willing to sit down and talk. But when things like this has happened, and now they want to have a conversation, like you said, the conversations now turn into yelling matches. You know, speaking bad about all officers and painting everybody under one brush. And everybody that's in law enforcement are not bad officers. You have more good officers than you do bad officers. But right now, the bad officers have overshadowed all the good in any department. So now the police departments are getting a bad rap. It's like nobody wants to listen to a reasonable person now, reasonable officers. Now it's like, oh no, you're all the same. They're putting us in the same position, and it's wrong. And you're right, your officers are tired. They're out there. We're all out there, you know, when this happened, and we're trying to protect the communities where a lot of this stuff is happening in, but we're still getting ridiculed for what we do. And like you said, your job now as a chief, you have to go in there and you have to tell your officers, look, you know, this is not us. Hold your head up high, right, and still do a good job. And it's hard to go to work every day knowing that the people that you're going to work for, you know, don't like you or don't trust you, or not going to do what you say, listen to you. It's hard, okay? Because the men and women on your department, just like my department, LA County Sheriff's Department, they're great men and women who put that badge on, put their uniform on, and go out and try to do a good job. And right now, just like you said, community involvement. A lot of agencies have community involvement, community policing, things like that. But I think where all this stuff is happening at, the people in those communities are not involved in the community policing aspect of our departments. And that's what we need to look at too. They have to get involved. Community policing has been around for a long time, and a lot of major large departments have a whole department that deals with community policing, where you have more police in the community, walking the beats or out engaging amongst the people in the community. Like you said, you have that in your community, but it sounds like all your citizens in your community don't know that exists.
So
And,
I love that one point that you made. I want to touch on it. A lot of departments do have community policing. They'll say they're a community-oriented police agency, but they'll have a unit or a team that's who does that.
right.
If the basic patrol officer out on the street engages a citizen and the citizen says, hey, I'd like to know more about this and that, and I'd like to put a meeting together. And if they say, well, hold on, you need to call the community affairs officer on Monday, you do not have a community-oriented policing department. You have not made organizational transformation and transferred the attitudes and the culture of every person in that agency towards that. And I don't even know that I have, but I think that's the goal that every agency needs to get to, because you're right. I mean, citizens don't know, and you have to use every avenue to let them know that they can be included. You almost have to continuously bug them so that they know that they can be included. I feel like I can push back a little bit, because if you live in Redondo Beach and you don't know that you can be included in our police department, you have not been paying attention. Now, maybe I haven't done a good enough job, but I don't know. Tonya, what do you think about that? If you live here and you don't know that you can't have a conversation with us, my contention is you've not been paying attention.
Yeah, or it's something that you didn't want. I think on some level, it has to be something that you want for yourself. No one's going to force it on you. That's a whole different situation. Like, we're going to make you guys come to this. We have, our neighborhood watch. We've had meetings here. The community is engaged in that. That's a first step, just right there in your little nodule of the city. And then you do have the community engagement board, and you guys have so many activities. There's an opportunity to interact. But I guess my question would be, is this a solution for every city? Can every city integrate an effective form of community policing?
My answer is yes. Absolutely they can. But I think as chiefs and managers of police departments, we have to realize something if we really want cultural change within police departments. We cannot let our officers day in and day out be a reactive force to what happens in their communities only. We cannot let that happen, and that's what we do. Here's how it happens. You graduate the police academy, I put you in a car, you don't have enough seniority, so you work graveyard and you work weekends. For 5 years, call after call after call after call. Who in the community are they contacting? They're contacting the people that are causing problems. And I know this because when the officer messes up and I bring them in and I have to discipline them, I always ask them this question. How many people in our community do you think are criminals? The answers that I have been given over the years almost make me want to cry. Like, are you serious? You seriously believe that 50% of our population are criminals? I don't care what neighborhood you're in America. That's crap. It's less than 1%. But if that's all an officer sees, then that's what they know. It is our job to let them see people like everyone here that's on this screen, and let them see them when there's not a problem. You can't have a discussion when there's a problem. I can't get to know you, Tonya, when you call the police and you're having a really bad day.
Exactly.
I get to know you well. And you can't get to know me well, because when the call says this or the call says that, and you're a cool person, but you put your hand in your pocket, you're not going to like what I tell you. And so we have to create scenarios for our police departments where our men and women can engage when there's not a problem. You remove the barrier, which is the radio call, the issue, you remove that, and then you build a relationship. And if we don't fund our departments in such a way and run them in such a way with the money that we have that we do that, we will fail and we will create us versus them mentalities with our police departments.
So I'm going to jump off my timeline a little bit to ask this question. Many people want to know, what is defunding the police look like? That's the new term right now, defund the police. What does that actually look like? What does that entail? Because for someone that has benefited from the police in San Jose, California, I would hate to have seen it defunded. So it must mean something that I don't understand. And many people keep asking now. Can either one of you help me with that?
I've been talking a lot. I'm glad to give you my perspective. But if someone else, so, all right, I'll start. That's a horrible idea. That's a horrible idea. Now, if you take away money, hey, if a police department has too much money and they're not doing a good job in the community and whatever, maybe they need to be scaled back or refined, or maybe that department needs a new direction. I don't know. But you take my department or most departments around here in the South Bay that I know, we're already getting hit 5-10% because of the lack of revenues that are coming in the next fiscal year. So we're already experiencing this crunching. I mean, we've trimmed the fat, we're through the muscle, and we're down to the bone right now. If that continues, I will tell you what will happen. The things in the police agencies that are most focused on community engagement are gonna go first. Those are the things we can do. Those aren't the things we have to do. You start defunding these police departments, the lack of community engagement with the communities is going to go down and it's going to get worse. What you want is you want to be able to have, and this is why I love Redondo Beach coming from Hawthorne. I came here and I was like, all right, I have time. I have resources and I have time and I have a blank canvas, and I'm going to focus that time putting people out into the community because I'm not required to go call and just play catch up and put band-aids on things. So the defunding of police departments is an idiotic idea. I don't agree with it one bit. People are going to disagree with me, and that's fine. But I think that our communities and the ones that are struggling the most need us the most. They just need good relationships with their departments. They need great police officers that engage, and they will see the power of that.
Gia?
Well, my question to you, because I'm not a chief like the chief here. I'm kind of line person. I'm just a lieutenant, so I don't make any decisions for my department because my department is really big. But when the word defund police, the question would be to you as a citizen in these communities, what do you think they mean when they say defund the police? Okay. Do you think that this means taking money from the police department and putting the money somewhere else? And how does that look when you take money from a police department, like the chief said? What do the people think that's going to look like? Because like he said, the first thing that's going to go is the things that citizens say they want. They want more community involvement or police involvement with the community. Well, those programs are going to go first. Okay. And then you think, okay, you think defunding police just means police officers are going to be defunded, but other jobs are going to go too. You have your secretaries, you have other people. There's other functions in the department besides just what you see in a black and white in a uniform. So those jobs will go too when you talk about defunding, because they're going to cut money across the board everywhere. So if people mean defund the police, take money away from the police, take money away from our salaries, put less. Then if you defund the police, you're gonna have less police officers in your community protecting and serving your community when you need us. Okay, because if you take money away, like the chief said before, he only had 5 officers a day, 5 cars out before the 12 and 12. So just imagine if you took money from Redondo Beach PD, that might now look like 2 officers out there for an 8-hour shift. So, and I don't know the square mile radius of Redondo Beach, but how effective do you think they would be if a crime was happening at your house, if your house is getting broken into and there's only 2 officers out there to handle the situation, or a bank was being robbed in your city and there's only 2 officers there because we said, let's defund the police?
You're asking me?
I'm just saying, that's my question. When you heard that, what do you think, you or Sarita, when you heard that defund the police, what came across your mind? What does that look like to you?
It sounded like it must be something that I clearly didn't understand, because I can't imagine not having someone to call if there's a problem.
Right.
I had an incident, I had to call 911. Girl, they were at my door before I even hung up. So do I want that to change? Absolutely not. We have resource officers in the schools. The children are getting to interact with officers now, so that their first interaction isn't when something bad happens in junior high school or high school. As a parent, I can appreciate that. So what does it look like? I don't know. That's why I'm asking, because sometimes people say things and I feel like I must be missing something. Like I totally miss that piece in education, because I don't understand what that looks like. Sarita, any ideas?
I have a lot of thoughts. And where I definitely appreciate this conversation. There was a couple points, and not to get off of this topic, my thought when I hear defunding the police was re-strategizing, taking the money and creating something that's actually service oriented and that's actually helpful to communities that aren't as lucky to have Chief Kauffman as their chief of police, and strategizing and finding new ways of approaching this notion of protecting and serving, because it does feel to me as though there has been a glitch in the matrix somewhere where, and maybe it's the us and them mentality that has run fairly rampant, that has been able to highlight these bad cops that infiltrate the force. This notion, it feels like we've gotten a little further away from the protecting and serving. So when I heard, and when I hear things like defunding the police department, my hope maybe is that it is a re-strategization of creating spaces and that gets us back to this notion of protecting and serving, and not policing streets in a way that creates more division. So that, to answer that point. Also, Gia, when you were speaking about your feelings around being an officer, and how, and both of you, also Chief Kauffman, of how one or a few bad cops is creating this broad stroke of the force as a whole and as an entirety. It hit me differently when you spoke about it, Gia, as opposed to Chief Kauffman, because when you were describing it, the thing that came up for me was this notion of, that's how Black people feel in our workforces and in our lives every single day. We feel as though, as Black people, there are these few bad apples, if you will, that has created this broad stroke from the nation that we all have to be looked at in a certain way or a certain manner, because there may be someone who in 2 cities over that robbed someone that fits the description of Black and male. And because you are Black and male, you now fit that description. That's a broad stroke. And so that hit me in a way that I wonder if the same things that police officers and lieutenants and people on the force feel that they're being criticized or have this broad stroke being painted, really understanding that that is a notion and that is a feeling that we have more in common than we maybe recognize, that as Black people, we feel the exact same way going into the world. And that's on a consistent basis. That is not just when shit pops off and we get filmed of something terrible happening. I feel scared or gaslit on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So that was, but then that also led me into my third point, and then I'll stop, which is this notion of vicarious trauma. And from a mental health perspective, being a lieutenant, being a chief, and consistently having interactions with communities that may sometimes be hostile to you, and how that creates this sense of vicarious or secondary trauma in your life. And once again, creating this understanding that also as Black people, being in the world, we are going through vicarious trauma daily. So really starting to put the pieces together that we may have more in common than we do apart. That's my piece.
Tonya, can I address that real quick? Sarita, I love what you said there. And I think where people need to be is more inclusive than just a written document, more inclusive than just, hey, a statement. We are an open book. You can join us. There needs to be real action across the board that shows and proves that the relationship between the public and the police, or the Black community and the police, is real and genuine. And I think what that looks like is, so, and it's hard to do. I'm not going to tell you like, oh yeah, hey, this is easy to do. This is hard to do, but I know that we can do it. Tonya will probably attest to this. On our community engagement board, these are just our citizens. These are people that live here. But we let them in. We let them be part of our hiring process. We let them sit on our promotional exams and have an input and have a say as to what this department is going to look like and what that leadership is going to look like. That same thing needs to happen in the communities. So when a community is building a program or they're sending a message, you can't just talk about the police in your community. You need to have them there and have them be a part of it. And Tonya said this too about the schools. It's all about being there when there's not a problem, so that people aren't seen as the enemy. And inclusiveness and action is where the rubber meets the road on this issue. You know, you can't just say you do it. You have to do it. Not everyone's going to like it. It's going to make people uncomfortable, but that's the way it goes, you know. If we get uncomfortable at a time like this, we can get comfortable later and we can see each other as humans. So I hear what you're saying. I talked to some of our Black police officers, and some of the things that are being said to them and their family members, and I've worked with them in uniform for a long time, and it's tough. They have a tough spot in the community, but we all need to be able to see each other without the color of our skin or without this uniform and this badge. Like, let's find out who we are behind. Let's find out each other's character and make decisions based on that. And we got to force that down each other's, you know, I guess it's a bad way to say it, but we've got to, we have to force action, and that is the way to do it.
Let me ask you something, both of you, that many people wonder, you know, with what happened recently, what has continuously happened, many people want to know about the training for police officers, right? So, you know, there's what you can and what you cannot do, but what always happens when someone dies is, of course, something that someone wasn't supposed to be doing. So is there some type of formal and then informal training for officers, like on the books, this is what we teach you, and when you get in certain situations, there's these alternative things to do? How do people continue to put forth and do things that are against policy and procedure when that's supposedly not in the training? Who does police training?
And can I just add to that as well, Tonya? And then another piece to that is that off the book training, I know that there isn't, but I mean, maybe there is, how it gets in so many different spaces, because what I was hearing was that, you know, the knee on the neck or in the back, or that wasn't a protocol for how to maneuver. However, we see it in many different places, not just in Minneapolis. We've seen it in LA. We've seen it we've seen it a lot. So how does it, if it's not supposed to happen, how does it end up infiltrating so many different
Police departments.
departments?
So to start off with the first part of the question, the training, and this would be different in every state across the country, but it's fairly similar. I can tell you that most training is fairly similar. However, in California, we have what's called POST, Peace Officer Standards and Training, and they are the certification authority for all police training. They're the ones that determine the number of hours and how long you'll train on force and how long you'll train on community relations and how, you know, what actually has to go into becoming certified as a police officer. It's about 900 hours. That's the initial part of the training. That's what everyone knows as the police academy. So it's a 6-month academy, let's say. Once an officer completes that academy, or a deputy completes the academy and they come back to their department, now the in-service training begins. And that's an additional, in our case, about 5 months, where we are taking now everything that the person has learned in the academy, and now we're training them on procedure, everything into policing. You'll never be able to teach everything, by the way, in 5 months. Lots of officers will tell you that they learn quite a bit after they get off training and they're out on their own and they're trying to figure things out. But that's generally how it goes. And then there's ongoing training from there. So there are certain things that need to be recertified every year, every couple of years. And all of the continual training that goes on in law enforcement has a level of post-certification. So whether it is a academy that's teaching it or our own people teaching it, they would have to go through a course and become certified. That course would have to be certified before it could be taught and someone could get the appropriate number of hours. So, and that goes on through a person's entire career. I still go to training. It's a little bit different than what the line level officer is going to go to, but I have to go to, you know, executive level training, and everybody does that throughout their whole career. So that's how it looks. Now, back to the hard question, back to Sarita's question. How does this happen? I don't have a great answer for you other than there are definitely things that happen that are out of police policy. They need to be addressed and people need to be accountable when they happen. So that is a hard thing to do. Any police manager will tell you it's very difficult to go through the accountability process within a police department. There are tons of rights and we use lawyers and it's a long drawn out process, but accountability is very, very important in law enforcement. I believe that there are agencies that could probably use a bit more accountability. And then there are probably agencies that I've seen that seem like they're so focused on discipline and not on training that they've lost sight of having people grow. So it's definitely a delicate balance. But the bad stuff that happens, I think it's cultural. When I see a knee on the neck like that, and now the entire world calling for the removal of the carotid restraint, that wasn't a carotid restraint. That was nothing that anyone's ever been taught. But how does it happen? It happens, and somebody needed to intercede in that. We all have those policies. So then I ask myself, well, why doesn't that happen? I think it's cultural. I think that the other officers on scene didn't feel that they could intercede, maybe. I don't know. I don't know them and I wasn't there. But I do know that we have to create cultures within policing where we hold one another accountable. And we don't say, well, this person has more experience than me, therefore I'm not going to say something to them. Agencies that I've been at, that I've worked at, where there's a level of accountability side to side, are much better at keeping everybody in line. And I know it because I've had it happen to me. I've had someone tap me on the shoulder, and I'll share a secret with you, but it was a moving time in my career. I had someone tap me on the shoulder after I had made an arrest. And I won't tell you the entire story, but when it was over, this older officer looked at me and he says, "Hey, a good cop could put that person in handcuffs and take them into jail the way that you did." I'm like, "Okay, good." He goes, "A great cop could have talked him into it." And I felt like, wow, I was probably using too much force. I was acting a fool. I was young, and we need that. And that's the culture we need. And Sarita, long answer to your question, but that's how you stop that stuff. That's how you stop it. You know, every organization has these problems where people are doing stuff wrong and someone won't say anything. Well, people have to say something. And I think that would help.
You're right. And I'm just going to touch on what in my department, we do have people who look at all our forests, and all our forests is scrutinized. And to some degree, some of us feel as though sometimes it's scrutinized too much. And there are agencies who do have policies already in place that that the citizens don't know that do exist about intervening and stopping that. But I agree with the chief. A lot of this stuff is a culture thing. It's culture, and how do we change that? That, like he said, he doesn't know, and I don't know either. We get a lot of training and we get retrained. They're always, every 2 years we have to go and get more training. The training is there, but also too, a lot of officers get training outside of the department. They take these, these karate class courses, taekwondo, whatever that stuff is called. They learn stuff in those kind of classes too. Just to better, I guess in their mind to be able to be equipped with whatever they need, whatever they think is going to come at them at any given point. I don't know why they do that, but they do. That's their right. Just like you can go and take taekwondo training and be able to, encounter me and maybe take my gun away from me or subdue me. I don't know, but it's there, so they do that too. But also, like he said, it's a culture thing, and I'm going to touch on even as a manager. Okay, when it's something that happens, I'm sure in every job, in some aspects, when you have a senior person and you have a new person. Okay, the new person feels as though they can't tell a senior person what to do or what not to do because they just don't think they have the experience, or are they afraid to because they think something's going to happen to them, they're going to get ridiculed or things like that. And I'll take a prime example. We have what they call experience. We have patrol officers that will come back and work overtime in the jail facility. And sometimes as managers, supervisors, we talk, and lieutenants, we talk, and things are not getting done that they need to do. And we look and we see, okay, we've had a bunch of overtimers working. So, you go to the staff and say, hey, how come this didn't happen? And it's all, well, I had overtimers, okay, they're overtime. They're getting paid more money than you for those 8 hours. And how do you let them sit with you for 8 hours and not do anything? Just because they work patrol? But that's the culture thing. It's like, well, how come you didn't tell them that you need them to do something? Well, ma'am, they work patrol. They're okay. I don't care. They work patrol. As a lieutenant, I need stuff to get done. So tell them what needs to get done, or I'll tell them. Well, no, ma'am, I don't want you to tell them. Well, no, but I need the stuff to get done. So it's a cultural thing. It's like, I don't get it, but that's kind of what happens. And how do we fix that? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. And I don't know, can it be fixed? I think it can be fixed, but it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight. But like the chief said, a lot of times it's just really, we have to be open. Everybody has to be open. Law enforcement officers have to be open, and so do the citizens have to be open. And we have to engage. We have to, sit down and like you say, have coffee with a cop, that kind of thing, or, come to the community meetings and stuff. And even when you see the cops in your patrol, in your area, stop and talk to them. We're not bad people. We're human just like everybody else. When we go to Starbucks and get coffee, you can say hello, good morning, how you doing? And you'll be surprised. A lot of people will talk to you. We'll talk, stuff. It's like, but sometimes we're out and about, and it's a lonely job. Being in that black and white patrolling your area sometimes is lonely. And sometimes we get out to stretch our legs and we want to have a conversation. We want to have a nice conversation. How your day? How was your day? But we don't get that all the time. We get sometimes, you know, we get mad dog, you know, you know, that kind of stuff, you know. So, and it's funny because when I'm out in, not in uniform, when I'm out in my community and I see cops at the places I go to eat at and stuff, I say, hey, how's it going? You know, I talk to them and stuff, and you'd be surprised. They don't know that I'm a cop because I don't look like a cop, you know, so they're like, oh, hey, you know, how you doing and stuff, you know. So if, you know, so it's just really, we have to engage one another. And right now, like you said, everybody's, you know, we're all upset because what happened should not have happened. By no means, that should have never happened. Okay. And we keep asking ourselves, why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening? And that's what we got to try to figure out. Why does it keep happening? Because it shouldn't happen. And I agree with you, Sari, like when you said how we feel as Black people. Yes, I'm a law enforcement officer, but I'm a woman first, and I'm a Black woman. And I encountered, even when I'm not at work, going to other places, just going by my daily life sometimes, always feeling as though, you know, I'm looked at differently because of the color of my skin. And it shouldn't be that way, but it is, you know. And how we have to continue to work at that too, because it's happening on all jobs, not just in law enforcement. I'm sure if people who work in other jobs, they can say the same thing. As a Black person, they feel a certain way too in certain situations on their jobs. So
is there a level of implicit bias training in the academy or in this ongoing training? Is that something new? Has it always been there? Can we do better?
Yeah, it's not new. It's not new. It has been around. I will tell you that it probably varies in the levels that it's trained. But yes, we do implicit bias training, explicit bias training. We even went so far as to send members of our department through a train the trainer course to be able to continue to present that training on an ongoing basis. But we do it. And those are hard trainings. They're interesting to watch the posture of the people that are in the training. I've seen them start to go wrong because the presenter comes at it the wrong way, and they're very, very sensitive topics. But yeah, we actually do it. It's important to do those kind of trainings, just like it's important to take Tonya or Sarita and bring them into our training. And then, hey, take a look at this. Hold this fake gun and point it at the screen and tell me what you would do. Because we all need to see what it is that we actually do and what it is that we actually experience so that we can get on common grounds. You know, the thing about force in policing is it's never going to be pretty.
no.
Force is never pretty, and it's always used because they're trying to effect an arrest. And sometimes we do not choose as law enforcement the level of force that's at hand. Sometimes we don't make the decision. The person that we are contacting makes the decision. And if we could all take a deep breath, especially in those instances, we would have less force across the US, but we do not. A lot of people think we try to hide behind what it is we do with use of force. At my police department, you can get on our website and you can click on a tab that says transparency, and you can look up every type of force we have used in the last 5 years. It'll tell you how many control holds, how many shootings we've had, how many, everything. It's all on there. And then we even call out how many of those were out of policy, which would mean that they resulted in discipline, or how many of those resulted in extra training for that person or training for the police department. So a lot of talking about use of force is talking about it open and honestly and presenting it so that communities understand what it is. You know, I don't know if you ask the everyday citizen that doesn't know anything about policing, like how many officer involved shootings there are at a given police department at any time, I bet you that their numbers would be way off. Be wrong, but I don't know. Tonya, do you know how many officer involved shootings we have in Redondo Beach?
No, less than 50, isn't it?
How about 5 in the last 6 years?
Yeah. Wow.
So I have a question about that because I'm thankful that Redondo Beach has such transparency and such low numbers in terms of the way that they use force. And my question would be, Chief, would you have that same level of transparency in a demographic or in a community or a city that doesn't look like Redondo Beach? And for those of our viewers that may not understand the demographic of Redondo Beach, it's predominantly white. It's a beach city. It's significantly smaller. So I'm wondering to you, Chief, for a place, say, like, take one of our more notorious departments like Rampart. They've definitely cleaned themselves up since the days of Rodney King and such. But this level of transparency and the great things that you've been able to do with Redondo Beach, is there a way to replicate that in some of the communities that don't look like Redondo Beach?
The answer is yes. And you know, the LAPD, the LA Sheriff's Department, they are taking the lead on a lot of these things. It's not necessarily a smaller affluent community where it's easier that's taking the lead. A lot of the reform that has come about in policing has come about because it's been forced onto agencies through various consent decrees and things. And what happens is a lot of that stuff will come out and it becomes a best practice. For example, recently there was a Senate bill called 1421 that was passed in California. And there's 4 different instances now where if these certain things have occurred within a police department, officer involved shooting, use of force with bodily injury, sexual assault, or lying, those are the 4. If those have occurred within an agency, you have to disclose them via a public records request to whoever asks. That was a change for law enforcement. LAPD and the LA County Sheriffs were the first ones that came out and said, well, rather than wait for a Public Records Act request from the LA Times or whatever, we're just going to put them all online. And at first I was like, whoa, wait a minute, you're just going to post those on your website? But the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know, that's the way to go. If we screwed up, we screwed up. And so that's what we're doing now. Yeah, so the answer to your question is yes, you can do this in any demographic. The rates are going to be different. If I post my crime rates, are going to be way different than they are in the city of Hawthorne, but it doesn't matter. But the data is important. You know, if you have more uses of force, but you have a much higher rate of crime, especially violent crime, that number is going to make more sense. And I think if we put everything out there so that people can see it, it'll make for a better conversation. You shook your.
But will it though? I mean, in terms of higher rates of crime and violent crime, I think that's when the implicit bias comes in as well, because this notion of predominantly Black and brown communities has higher rates of violence. But so I don't know if I completely agree with neighborhoods like Hawthorne having higher rates and that not be a contributor of the implicit bias that we've seen.
Those are 2 different things. You're talking about higher rates of crime contributing to implicit bias. Maybe it does. I'm talking about higher rates of crime contributing to greater rates of the type of force used or using force because of the crime rate. If your crime rate is higher, you're having more calls for service that are causing more arrests, there's going to be more force. I'm an optimist. I still think you can do that in any community without implicit bias. I'll go so far as to say this. when I watched the video that we all watched, race wasn't the first thing that came to my head. I was like, that's a horrible tactic. What are you doing? I don't know that officer. I don't know what's.
Or the 3 officers that were holding his legs down.
That's right. It's horrible. But I'm just telling you that I raise my kids not to see color. I do my department, every policy. It's not about, treat one group different than another. We try to do it all the same.
So here's the thing. When people say they don't see color, or they want to live in a world where they don't see color, we are asking actually that you do see color, that you do see that we are a people that have been treated differently and that have a higher level of fear, actually.
Because of our color.
We're asking you to see the color so that you can actually acknowledge who you're seeing. I don't see the color, and I know what you're saying, but for people that really on a day-to-day basis say, I don't see color, it's a little disingenuous because we know you do. I know that there are certain people that won't let their kids come over and play with my kids because of my color. They're not going to say that, but saying I don't see color is saying I'm gonna feign ignorance to what you've been through.
Well, I think
I'm gonna act on color.
Wait a minute. I think what he was trying to say, and I get what you're saying, Tonya, and I get what you're saying, Sarita, too. And what he's saying from his position of a law enforcement officer, when he saw the video, his thing was the tactics was all wrong. No matter who was laying down there, in his mindset, that was all wrong. And yes, I get it. Yeah, we do want you to see color when it comes to us because we are a color, and stuff like that. But I think again, the interpretation of what he said is you interpreted a different way. He wasn't saying he doesn't see color, so to speak. He's just saying
that you did though, and that's okay.
I know he said that, Sarita, but he's speaking of the tactic that the officer was using, which he said was all the way wrong. Like, why are you even using that tactic?
That's right, and that was the first mind, which I understand that. But then the second mind clicks in and recognizes that that's a Black man under that man's knee. So, yeah, okay.
So here's another thing. Yeah, I did say I teach my kids not to see color. I do. I understand what you're saying. However, I'm not going to write policies or teach people to treat one race or one type of person differently than another. I'm not. I think where this boils down to is action. I want action done by police officers based on what's happening in the actions of another person and their demeanor, not the color of their skin. I don't want them to see the person's color. I want them to act based on the actions of the person. Here's the other thing I don't want them to do. I don't want them to not take action because of a person's color. You can't say, well, I feel, if I do this, it's gonna, no, the law is the law. The law doesn't see color. And it's a hard thing to talk about, but it's
but does it though? I mean, I hear you, Chief, and I am definitely Team Chief Kauffman. Chief, I am. And you are not the spokesperson for all white people, just like I am not the spokesperson for all Black people. However, I really want this to be a real conversation, which I think we've done great at having. And I want everyone to know, especially white people in this climate, that words matter and that our tongues are sharp. And when you say things and wholeheartedly believe them, that it impacts the way in which you move in the world. And so I'm asking that you do see us. I'm asking that you do see color and that you do see race, because when you are able to see us, there's a humanity that comes with that as well. Because oftentimes we don't feel as though we're seen as human, maybe not by you, but by people who look like you. And I think that it's important for us to start having these uncomfortable conversations. And I'm so appreciative of you, Chief, saying that being uncomfortable is really important during these times, because out of discomfort comes growth. And I am 100% with you on that, but it's also about being uncomfortable in all facets, just not the facets that you designate as appropriate places to be uncomfortable. Like, we need to be uncomfortable across the board at this point. And so, you know, whether it's talking about white privilege, whether it's discussing implicit and explicit bias, like, those things matter. And because it's uncomfortable, we've done really well at being complicit to the white fragility and the white ego. And my thing is, let's start to push back against that a little bit and start recognizing that we all need to be uncomfortable in this in order for change to happen. You said something about force isn't pretty, and I agree with that as well. Force isn't pretty, but also revolution isn't pretty either. And they're both necessary in this moment. And so I'll go back to my cubby hole. I'll go back to the corner now.
I think that is just that term is just a trigger at this point where people say, I don't see color. And we know we've been in situations where they do. But
Tonya, we all see color.
I know, and what I was going to say, hold on real quick. And with that, I want to take it back to when we were talking about force. The cameras have been showing a lot of unjust force being put on civilians that are protesting. What are you guys' thoughts on that? Like, is it just a moment of frustration? Has somebody given the go-ahead to just, let off on people so they'll go back home and stop protesting? Like, what is going on in the streets right now? And the camera seems to be catching all of it.
I think the way that that any law enforcement agency, any law enforcement executive is going to answer that question is that every single one of those things needs to be investigated. And if someone used excessive force, they need to be held accountable for it, period. However, when this type of stuff happens and chaos starts to ensue and things get crazy, I think you're going to see greater instances of force that is uglier and or not justified at times. But if you were one of the officers that was in downtown LA on, I think that was Saturday night, it got crazy. It got crazy. And so, yeah, there's going to be more and more videos. Everything's on video. Here's the thing that's really interesting. Everyone should have body-worn camera video, in my opinion, officers. If I was an officer, I would definitely want it. I wouldn't say, oh, I don't want it because I'm going to get caught doing something. If that's your mindset, take off the badge or stop doing what you're doing, because you got to do the right thing all the time. And, we're held to a very, very high standard. So that means even in the case of a riot, chaos, civil unrest, you're still held to that standard.
Yeah, I couldn't be a cop. I know my body can't. The way my mouth is, I don't even think. No. I'm so thankful to the both of you, because
exactly.
That's a job I couldn't do.
So I'm glad you said that, Sarita, because you know your mouth, so you know that you've seen some things that that you probably would react a way that you might not look pretty on the camera. So just think about
I do that and I'm not a cop. I mean,
exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Life.
So we have to have more restraint than you when we're in this uniform. But at some point, I've seen a lot of stuff. Okay, just like the color. I've seen my own people say things to me, call me things that I'm like, oh my God, stuff. But I didn't necessarily react the way I wanted to react if I didn't have a uniform on. If Gigi would have saw them and they said it to Gigi, it would be a little different. But I was at the time maybe being Deputy Neil, or I could have been a sergeant at that time when these things happen. So I couldn't get with them, as you say, as I would say, when I'm not in uniform, because I was in uniform. So it works both ways. We take a lot of, can I say, shit, okay, in the community.
This your show. Of course you can say shit.
That we serve, okay, and I'm speaking from being a Black female in a uniform. I'm not speaking being a police officer or a white police officer. I'm speaking from being a Black police officer, okay, for over 30 years. So, and it ain't been pretty, okay? And I've worked in my neighborhood, okay? I worked in the hood. So I've dealt with people that look like me. And everybody that look like me ain't nice like you and Tonya, okay? Ain't speaking to me like you and Tonya speak to me, okay? So sometimes, you know,
actually, you've called me less than nice on several occasions, but we'll just
well,
Put a pin in it, Tonya.
so, you know, and so it's just, I'm just doing my job. And sometimes, like the chief said, our job is not pretty, okay? You know, no, I don't get up every day going out saying, oh, I'm gonna hurt somebody today. No, I get up every day going saying, I'm gonna, you know, do my job and I'm gonna come home. But sometimes people I have encountered, okay, where I've had to arrest people where I couldn't be that great police officer I normally am, where I can talk to you in the backseat of the car. There's been times when I couldn't talk you in the backseat of the car. So, you know, we had to, you know, a little scuffle had to happen for you to get in the backseat of the car. Okay. Because you committed a crime, okay? And when I asked you to put your hands behind your back, you know, I'm arresting you or whatever, you know, your mouth started going off, okay? And you didn't get in the backseat of the car. You know, you was like, I'm not doing that. So you resisted me. So I had to put you in the backseat of the car and I had to use some force. Am I wrong for doing that? Well, some people might say, oh yeah, if they caught on camera, oh, she shouldn't have. But the person committed a crime. I'm here to arrest them. So so, you know what I'm saying? So, you know, it's not a pretty job. Like you said, you couldn't be a police officer. And a lot of people don't, you know, but those that are, you know, for every bad one, there's a whole bunch of good ones. And like the good ones are getting painted under this with the same brush as the bad ones. And it's rough. You know, it's emotionally for you know, for them, because they're just trying to do a good job. And there are bad apples, and there are bad apples in every job. Now, how we weed those bad apples out, I don't know, because again, when we go for the interview, we always put on our best behavior for that interview to get that job. So all our little biases and our little tendencies, that they don't show up at the interview. They show up after we've gotten the job and we've been working for a while. That's when they kind of show up. So is there something that departments can put in place to get rid of those kind of people? You know, I don't know. And maybe that's something that we need to continue to work on so we can get rid of those kind of people.
Yeah, the backgrounds and hiring for excellence is super important in how you create the culture of a police agency. One point I want to make, Tonya, you were asking about, hey, the excessive force that's happening in the riots and stuff. There's also a big, we're in a tough spot, right? It's the first job of the law enforcement officer in civil unrest is to protect the First Amendment right of every person that's there. We'll have a briefing, and that's exactly what we say. I will stand up and say, your job under the Constitution of the United States is to protect the First Amendment right of every person here to protest. That's what it is. That supersedes everything else. But then we see what happened in a few places. Civil unrest, rioting, windows, fires, the whole 9 yards. And you have agencies that are being criticized for acting too much, and you have agencies that are being criticized for not acting enough. And there's a very, very fine balance. And to be able to do that perfectly without any force is very, very difficult. And so that's the catch-22 that a lot of agencies are in right now. There are chiefs that are under fire right now for having not acted forceful enough or quick enough, and then ones that where people feel they acted too swiftly.
Well, Chief, looks like we could talk to you forever, but before we let you go, I would love to hear what your career was like when Rodney King happened, and how this is different to you, how this feels different, if at all.
Yeah, it does feel different. So I started in 1994. So I was actually a student at UCLA working for the UCLA Police Department during the '92 riots. So I was not in policing yet at that time, but I was in policing during the time of the trials and everything. And it was tough. On this, the attitude on the street and the feeling was very much us versus them, very contentious between the public and the police. I remember it distinctively, it was a rough time in policing. Does this feel different? Yes, it does. I just hope that it pushes us forward and doesn't slide us back 30 years and let it stick there, because there's been a lot of great progress in policing from then until now. Do we need to do more? Yes, we absolutely need to do more. We'll probably never get it perfect. We're human beings. We're going to make mistakes, but it does feel different this time, because this is across the entire U.S. Every major city, almost every city that I know around here is having they're having protests, they're having discussions. It's affecting everybody. So it's different. I think the 92 riots were focused more just here in LA.
Very good. Well, any other questions?
Were you in the force, Gia? When?
Yes.
How was it for you?
Well, it was a little different for me because I was in 92. I was a deputy and I was working in the jails. So I wasn't in patrol and seeing it from the patrol aspect, but I saw it in the jails, and it spilled over into the jails. So they started rioting in the jails, but it is different. It's a different feel. Then I didn't think much about it. It wasn't weighing as heavy on me as this time around. And
Do you know why? Do you have any ideas why?
I think because now it's in our face more. See, in 92, that's when the videotaping just really started, and you had your old VHS kind of recording type thing. We didn't have camera phones, so we wasn't seeing it. We wasn't seeing the destruction and what the news had played, and that's kind of what's going on still now. I think it's just oversaturated. We've oversaturated with it, so it's affecting us mentally, because every time you turn on TV, there's something. Or if you go to social media, there's something. Whereas in 92, you got it. They reported on it. They reported on the unrest, and I wasn't out in it. Now I'm out in it. Like when the rioting started happening this couple weeks ago, I was there. I had just left the post office in that same area where all this was happening. So it's just like, wow, if I would have stayed out there a little bit longer, in that area, I would have been caught up in it. It's like I could touch it. I can touch it now. In 92, I really couldn't touch it. If that makes any sense, So it's like, so it's different, and it seems like it's like you said, it's more. There's protests throughout all cities, where before in 92, I think the protests was only happening in a few places, in the greater Los Angeles area. And like now, this is happening in all over the states, in multiple states, in multiple cities and stuff. So it's just a lot more.
And it's not in just Black neighborhoods. It's
right,
everywhere.
yeah.
And I think that also impacts how this is being played out as well. It's like, it's not just happening in neighborhoods that we don't have to see and have to go into. It's in our backyard. We go to Nordstrom's all the time to get our insert shoe here. And
well, you should have saw me when that was happening. I was like, I need to be the incident commander. Let me lock this place, because I was like, that's my Nordstrom's, I go there all the time. So, it hit me. It was kind of personal. I was like, that's my shoe department. I have this layout of Nordstrom's in the back of my head. I can contain Nordstrom's with my eyes closed. I can contain that Grove with my eyes closed, because that's my place, So I was like, oh my God, they should have had somebody here. You should have saw me, but it's like, wow, it's in my backyard. But I think we like the chief said, I don't want this to years, because despite what people think, there has been progress, and there has been some good progress. What I think we need to do is continue to have conversations and not be so proactive. And have conversations when stuff is not bad going on. We need to have a conversation and get involved. A lot of the stuff that he talked about is public. All this is public information, and I think that people don't know. You can go to any police department and get the information that you want about the police department, even the larger ones and stuff. It's not just like the chief said. He has a website. A lot of agencies now have websites for their police stations, for the departments, and they're constantly putting information there for the public. Times have changed since 30 years ago. So there's more stuff where I think 30 years ago, there wasn't as much transparency that it is now. So there's more information available to people. I just think people, when I say people, I'm not talking about the four of us on this. I'm talking about our viewers, citizens. The information is out there. You just have to go and research it and get it. You know, it's there. We're not hiding anything. You just got to go on your computer, okay, and start looking some stuff up. You know, go to your city council meetings and stuff. Get involved, because we welcome you. You know, but it's just if you don't get involved and you sit back and then now this happens and now you want to be the voice of everything, and you know, stop that. You know, stay engaged.
Stop that. Well, Chief, any parting words for your viewers?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on. I want to thank the people of Redondo Beach. I will tell you that over the last week or so, I have heard from our citizens. I have heard a ton of support. They've been thanking us, waving at us, even at all the protests. You know, I will drive by and say hi, and they're like, "Oh, thank you." You know, they're holding a defund the police sign. Thank you so much. I was like, all right. So it's been a crazy time, but you know, I believe that the people that take the time to think about these issues with a level head will help. Those are the ones that are going to push this forward. You know, have the conversation, get involved, and that's really the key. And if more people in Redondo Beach want to get more involved, and they're listening right now, go to our website, try to talk to Tonya, become a part of our engagement board, come to our events, plan an event, be with a cop, come sit on the MLK bench with us. I mean, this is really how progress is made.
Absolutely. Sarita, Gia, you guys got anything coming up?
No, I don't have anything coming up, but I want to say something to the chief. You know, I'm going to be retiring soon. So if you're going to have any kind of advisory boards come, I would love to work on your board.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys in a couple weeks. Have a good one.
Thanks, y'all.